All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Now, from your day moves fast. Your news should too. That's why there's a new and improved Wish TV app, bringing you more local news, breaking alerts, live streaming, weather forecast, radar, and Indiana sports, all in one place. Customize your news feed to see the stories that matter most to you and get the information you need when you need it. Download the new and improved Wish TV app today on iOS or Android and take News 8 with you everywhere. Local news source. This is All Indiana Politics.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Governor Mike Braun has fired and replaced a state utility commissioner. Braun dismissed former state senator Andy Zay. He claimed there were ethics violations, but he has not said exactly what Zay is accused of. He also won't say if there is an investigation. Indianapolis City County Councilor Josh Bain is taking Zay's place. Here's what the governor had to say after he fired Zay.
It was from the very beginning when it was clear I was looking for folks ratepayer conscious, and the first thing out of the gate was granting a big increase, and that was not part of the interview in terms of selecting from all the people that wanted to do it. So I've run an organization for a long time before I got into government. If you don't have staff, people working with you in the same mindset, it's better to find somebody that does. When the first case came up, and it ended up kind of being a version of what's happened in the past, that you probably weren't putting two and two together. It's as simple as that. I've run an organization successfully way before I got in government, and you'll run into certain employees that will take their own point of view. You try to remediate it, you maybe try to get them to focus otherwise. He indicated that he wasn't going to.
Is this just about the AES rate increase, or were there other decisions that played into this?
It's about that, and probably what you're going to deal with down the road. And that was not a good indication of what I was looking for. I'm looking for somebody that's going to minimally give balance to ratepayers with the generators. Clearly, he didn't do that. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that stuff.
Meanwhile, the governor has once again extended Indiana's gas tax holiday. This after saying for months that his authority was about to run out. News 8's government reporter Garrett Berquist explains the governor's new legal reasoning.
The governor's authority to unilaterally suspend the gas tax was supposed to run out on August 6th. Braun says he was able to get around that by changing his legal reasoning. Braun originally cited the war with Iran and its impact on international oil shipping. His ability to act without the General Assembly's approval was about to expire. So now he's citing the ongoing war in Ukraine and wildfires in Canada's oil-rich province of Alberta. He says doing that allows him to reset the clock.
It's an additional burden that you got to take into account. The Iran conflict has got its own ebb and flow to it. When you had two other issues come into play, to me and the Attorney General, as well as members from both chambers, felt the same way.
Some Democrats say the governor's actions violate state law that governs executive orders. Democratic leaders say they don't quite go that far.
He's reaching. I mean, we're about Iran right now. He can stretch his tentacles and talk about, Alberta or Ukraine war that's been going on for 2 or 3 years now. He's doing what he can within the letter of law.
The gas tax suspension now runs through September 6th. Braun says he will reevaluate conditions every 30 days. He says he will be able to suspend the gas tax for up to 120 days.
In other news right now, some Indiana families with children who are disabled say they are being kicked off their health insurance through Medicaid. Several moms contacted our Kara Kenney. She's digging into what's causing the issues and what the state has to say.
Families with kids with disabilities rely heavily on Medicaid and Medicaid waivers. These programs help fund critical therapies, but some parents say they're getting letters kicking them off.
It's just devastating.
Ruth Hevelone lives in Kokomo. She's a mom to twin boys with autism. Her son Sammy waited 3 years to get on the Medicaid waiver. It was a game changer.
My son sees 9 different specialists. He has more than autism, way more going on. He gets 40 hours of therapy a week that's paid for by this waiver.
The waiver also pays Ruth's husband to be a full-time home health aide to the children. On June 1st, the family was notified by Indiana's Family and Social Services Administration that Sammy was kicked off Medicaid, which also impacted his waiver.
So, I was in a state of complete panic.
If a child is under 18 with a waiver, Medicaid typically only looks at the child's income and assets. Ruth says earlier this year, they wrote FSSA a letter stating their income was waived. Yet months later, FSSA told them they needed proof of the entire family's income and assets, which they provided.
You have to turn in everything, your mortgage, 30 days bank statements, 30 days pay stubs, everything.
When they went to the FSSA office,
and they said that the paperwork we turned in on May 22nd was still sitting on someone's task list to process.
Something similar happened to Tricia Norfleet. She also lives in Kokomo and has 2 sons with autism.
And we just have been struggling so hard to get our boys back on Medicaid. They are both on the waiver.
Tricia says the state kicked her son off Medicaid, saying she did not meet the income requirements, something Trish says doesn't make sense because parents' income is usually disregarded with the waiver.
We just want to get our kids back on their insurance. I don't have the words to describe just how much he needs these therapies, but they literally are life-changing for him.
Indiana's I-Team sent both Tricia and Bruce stories to FSSA. They told us they can't comment on individual cases due to privacy reasons. FSSA says it's collecting parental income in case of future changes, but emphasizes it is not being used to determine eligibility.
On the best days, it's confusing.
We asked ARC of Indiana to weigh in.
One of the things I'm seeing is paperwork errors.
They're an organization that advocates for families with disabilities.
I have probably consulted on or worked on more Medicaid appeals in the last 2 years than I have in the 10 years before combined.
Carly Shortino-Poulter says in some cases, people are getting cut off because they never got a letter from FSSA asking for certain information in the first place.
It's an automated situation, and because their paperwork hasn't been processed and been uploaded into the computer system turns it off, and then it's harder to get back on.
Will Coulter-Yon worked for FSSA for 12 years. He says a new assessment tool is leading to more denials.
And that assessment tool, they say, is scientifically proven to do a better job at determining the person's level of care.
Under the old assessment system, FSSA's denial rate for Medicaid waivers was 0.02%, and it's currently at 6%. FSSA tells us, importantly, eligibility standards have not changed. The improved assessment process simply provides a more accurate picture of an individual's current needs. Will is now running for state representative in the hopes of helping families.
I believe the solution is we need to invest in services.
Will helped Ruth resolve her son's Medicaid issue.
If it took a single email to get her son re-enrolled in a matter of hours, that proves to me that cut was arbitrary and should have never happened in the first place.
Bruce says the system needs to change.
They need to figure out how they are not going to cut off services for people of disabled children. That is like an absolute.
I'm Kara Kenney with Indiana's I-Team.
So the Family and Social Services Administration also says the new process is more accurate, more consistent, and better aligned with federal requirements and longstanding program expectations. We understand the concerns raised and are carefully reviewing each case to ensure decisions are correct, consistent, and fair. Coming up, Indiana's Best Political Team tackles that Medicaid issue and the governor's new gas tax holiday.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely of those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Circle City Broadcasting.
All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in Democrat Lindsay Hake and the newest member of Indiana's Best Political Team, Chaka Coleman. Good to see you, Chaka. Nice to have you here.
Welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so let's begin with that Medicaid waiver story that we just saw. Lindsay, how do you read this?
Yeah, this is not great. Redetermination for these children takes a long time for FSSA for some reason. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks, even after they've already been deemed a waiver recipient or a Medicaid recipient. So there's a lot of drama that these parents and caregivers are going through besides the care that they're giving that child. So they're then having to be turned into essentially a secretary, managing all of the emails back and forth, keeping up with FSSA's errors in redetermining their child.
Right.
And that unfortunately ends up it costs these children life-saving, in some cases, life-saving durable medical equipment like a G-tube or a trach, things like that. This is a life-saving issue the Braun administration simply needs to fix ASAP.
So to that point, Chaka, FSSA says that this is a federal government issue. Does the state have some discretion here, though?
Yeah, I think that what's most important is that we remember that these programs, you have to be eligible for them. So there are eligibility standards. There have been changes both on the federal and the state level that we have to make sure as a state that we are complying with. So I do think that it's important to note that these families are going through a very tough time. One of the toughest things that you'll ever go through is having coverage for yourself or your loved ones. And I don't think that anyone at FSSA is taking that for granted, but there definitely are some things that, you know, they cannot, their hands are tied on, and eligibility is definitely one of them.
Lindsay, I'll let you respond quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to disagree with Chaka. I'm just, the paperwork is just, they've hired more staff, FSSA has, to make sure that they can handle the need. The redetermination takes more time for some reason than it should. And it, you know, Will's right in the package that Kara put together. These can be fixed within a matter of an email. It can be fixed so quickly. It just depends on who that person is that's sending that email.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on that one. Another big story that we covered this week, of course, is Governor Mike Braun extending Indiana's gas tax holiday again. So to get around the limit on how long he can suspend it, he changed his legal justification to the war in Ukraine and Canadian wildfires. Chaka, I'll start with you. Does this violate the intent of limits on executive orders?
Absolutely not. I think that Governor Braun has made it very clear that his focus is on affordability. This is important to Hoosiers. It's an important issue across our nation. There are many, many different reasons why a governor would suspend the gas tax. So I think that focusing in on the fact that he did it and that he is listening and leading is more important than the why.
Lindsay?
Yeah, I'm not an attorney. I have no take on the legalities of his rubric for this particular reasoning. But I would tell you, it is important to involve the legislature on all of these conversations. I seriously hope that Governor Braun has included his legislative leadership on this conversation, specifically as we're dealing with revenue streams that affect Indiana taxpayers and also affect our local road decisions as well. And that's important to make sure we're including everyone. So I certainly hope that he's threaded the needle there. I'm so glad that he's taken affordability as his core issue. We need to work on utility bills, and I know we'll get to that next.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm hopeful that the affordability push continues, but let's remember those revenue streams.
What about the optics of it all, though? Because for months he had said, hey, I can't do it, and then all of a sudden, boom, he can do it.
Yeah, I mean, never throw it on me to figure out the rubric behind Todd Rokita's viewpoints on this, but I'm told that that's the word of God, so that's, I guess, how we're operating. That's not a decision I would make, but here we are.
Are you concerned, Chuck, about the optics, the way this looks?
I think that the governor has made it very, very clear that he is going to make locals whole, which is important, but I also think that he is dedicated to making sure that whatever he does is done through the lens of affordability, and we do have to keep that in mind.
Let's talk about that utility situation. Governor Braun has replaced Andy Zay, as you know. We talked about it a little earlier on the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. So he initially said that Zay was let go for ethics violations. But then when reporters kind of pressed him on it, Braun would not provide any details on that. He said this was mostly about the AES rate vote. So, Lindsay, is the firing lawful, I guess, is the number one question here.
I guess we'll have to see. I'm sure there's going to be more coming on this from both parties. But it's very tough for me to justify how First of all, this is not unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
We had a utility regulatory commissioner fired in 2012 with David Lott Hardy and the Duke Energy scandal dealing with Edwardsport. So this is not a new area. However, that was not challenged. And I think I would not be surprised if it were challenged this go around. And so we will have more on this. My crystal ball is not accurate at all on this. I guess we'll have to just wait and see what Governor Braun does, and to see if Senator Zay indeed plans to, I don't know, litigate.
Well, there you go. Are you concerned about a defamation lawsuit possibly, Chaka?
I don't think that there's any concern there. Obviously, I don't represent either one of them, but I do think that, like Lindsay said, it's really up to him on what kind of action he wants to take.
Okay. All right, ladies, stick around. Thank you so much for being here. Of course, much more to come after the break. When we come back, we take a closer look into an Indianapolis City County Councilor's proposal to raise road funding without a new wheel tax.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely of those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Circle City Broadcasting. The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely of those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Circle City Broadcasting.
All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Still with us, of course, Republican Chaka Coleman and Democrat Lindsay Haig. So a member of the Indianapolis City County Council wants to use the city's existing tax revenue to dedicate 10% of its budget to roads. He says this will allow the city to meet a new state match without raising its wheel tax. Chaka, how realistic is this?
I think it's very realistic, and I actually like that he's thinking outside of the box on this issue. Obviously, it's a tough vote for the council, but bringing forth great ideas is what his job is. And I think that what he's doing could potentially be something that the council can take up.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay?
I think you're just up against a timeline scenario with House Enrolled Act 1461, which enabled this whole conversation in the first place. You've got a deadline there of October 1, and I think with the conversation, the way it's happened all summer, to have first of all, I appreciate that too, and cannot agree with you more on thinking outside the box on this, but it's also governed very strictly by enabling legislation.
Yeah.
So we have to remember that. And I'm not necessarily sure the funds that Councilor Hart thinks are there. So it would require a lot more of some box checking and research on that. So I think we move forward.
He seems pretty confident that he could find the money.
He does. I mean, the plan mirrors very similar to what Joe Hogsett had, what Mayor Hogsett had thrown out there as an option too. But you've got a plan ready to go, and you've got a veto override coming on Monday night on the council meeting, at the council meeting. So we'll see what happens there. The Democrats have said they don't have the votes. Things are happening as we speak, so I think we pay attention and see how that works out on Monday night.
What are you, right now, as we sit here this morning and this afternoon, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think is going to happen during that?
I said a few weeks ago, I think they're going to override it. I would agree that's still my gut take on it. I think they are going to move forward with overriding the veto on Monday night, but time tells, and we'll see what happens.
That then means the wheel tax goes into play for Marion County, which some people are not pleased with it, Chaka.
I understand they're not pleased with it. I think the most important thing is if you do not come up with something, you're going to miss that $50 million match. And then if you do not come up with something this year, then in subsequent years, you're not going to be able to get that money whatsoever. So this is important for the city of Indianapolis, and this is an important leadership moment for Joe Hogsett to make sure that he gets these matching funds from the state.
So we're seeing other towns, other cities kind of coming up with similar wheel taxes. How does that play into this possible veto override?
Yeah, Terre Haute has already done it.
Beech Grove.
Elkhart, yeah, it's an imperative tool that local governments were given with this enabling legislation. And Chaka's absolutely right. We've got Indianapolis infrastructure depends on this vote on Monday night, and there is just not money that we can find. And with all due respect to Councilor Hart, there is just not a dependable revenue stream upon which we can count for that revenue to enable and frankly, the largest infrastructure improvement we've seen in the city of Indianapolis in decades.
How are other cities able to do this, Chaka? And it seems like Indianapolis is kind of up against it and having a problem coming up with a decision.
Listen, where there's a will, there's a way. They're going to make it work, and that's what leadership is about. And I think that councils all across the state are making tough decisions, and Indianapolis has to do the same.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to stay on top of it and see what happens.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Welcome to the team. Thank you so much for coming by. We have about 40 seconds left.
Sure.
Your thoughts, if you had to decide, if you had to guess, do they override it, yes or no?
I think they do. You've got a game changer with Josh Bain being no longer on the council, so you'll only have 24 as opposed to the normal 25, the threshold. From my research, will not change. So we'll just see, and
Chaka,
hopefully
yes
that's
or no?
We shall see.
Yes or no?
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Oh boy. All right.
Spoken
Here we
like
go.
a great lobbyist.
Good to see you both. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. We'll be right back.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely of those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Circle City Broadcasting.
And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.